Friday, 9 o'clock on the East Coast. You know what time it is. NFL Pick 6 show, week number 5. The quarter pole, kind of, sort of, somewhat. We're at the quarter pole. We've made it, as always. Rich Hribar, Sharp Football Analysis, the worksheet. John Daigle, 4 for 4, bet spurts as well. Yeah, man, we have a bye week, which, Rich, I feel like those that write every single game up, welcome, are very excited to see bye week. Are you excited to see bye weeks? Just 10 games, a 10-game main slate. You want the reprieve? You need it already at this point in the season?
I lost power today for like 4 hours, and I wasn't done writing up games, so thank goodness there was 2 fewer games.
Yeah, no Tampa, no Seattle, no Chargers. Cleveland on bye. Some would say they didn't play last week as well. We have another Sunday morning game. Jacksonville sticking around, and London's just 10 main games. We're going to focus on 10 main games on the main slate. 3 games specifically. They're specifically chosen by John Daigle, and Daigle sometimes surprises us and sometimes you don't. It's kind of chalk city, right? As far as the main slate, there's 3 games that really stand out, especially from a total point of view. And then after that, of course, if this is your first time, we run it back and talk about our favorite players, position by position, as far as players that playing games we've not yet talked about. Daigle, welcome to week 5.
Just a lot of teams that we can't trust. So we could probably get there with one-offs from the Bengals, but Joe Burrow's got to show me a little bit more to earn a spot on the pick 6 to talk about an entire game. Also, this slate as a whole, just interesting because when you lose Christian McCaffrey and Tony Pollard, running back looks like this. Running back is just a plethora of 6K guys that a lot of them are going to be chalk based on game script, but we'll get to that at the end.
Yeah, it's weird because we've had 12-game slates, 13-game slates, and it feels like there's been a lot of options. I don't know if you guys feel this way as well before we're going to dive in and do our 3 main games. But, Rich, it feels like it's a 10-game slate, and it feels almost like it's smaller than 10 games. Maybe that's because we have, like, Pittsburgh and New England and New Orleans and, like, Tennessee and the Jets and Denver. And there's a bunch of terrible teams.
Patriots game looks like the heart of darkness, man. Dean, you are not going to be seeing a lot of that game, I don't think, this weekend.
No.
I tried
red zone. You and Scott Hansen, I don't think you're going to be seeing much of that one.
I even thought, well, they lost Christian Gonzalez, a couple other defensive key players. Like maybe the Saints, I can squeeze a couple guys.
Did you watch Derek Carr last week?
No, I started looking, yes, and I was like, oh no, actually, I'm just not going to talk about anyone. It's that easy.
There's a reason a running back caught 13 passes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara and Zach Ertz are like the Spider-Man gif, right? As far as they're just the same exact stat line, essentially. 13 catches for 33 yards or something like that. Completely insane. Hey, we have the Listener League. Do want to shout out last week's winner. Get yourself 1 month free of RG Premium. Slide into my DMs at DFS Almanac and let us know in the comment section. Let us know in some possible way. Steeler Nation 60, who probably can use some good news. Steeler Nation 60. I imagine a Steelers fan. It's been a rough season for you in Matt Canada. Have you guys, by the way, not to totally derail the show, have you guys gone down the path of Matt Canada on Twitter? The things that he's saying, how great Matt Canada is?
No, he's got a burner, right? I thought I'd seen someone that he's got a burner account.
It's incredible. It's so good. Like, assuming this is him, he's like, oh, you guys want to blame us on Canada, but the quarterback stinks and he just makes a good throw. The call was great. I think he was actually responding to Warren Sharp, if I'm not mistaken. It was pretty spectacular.
Warren has attacked Matt Canada a couple times already through 4 weeks of the NFL season.
I have a feeling a lot more is going to happen moving forward too.
Oh man, yeah. Steeler Nation, you shout out to you. You won yourself a month free of RG Premium. If you want to partake in this week's Listener League, I'm going to go ahead and drop that into the chat right now. Most people listen to us on the replay, but we do appreciate those that listen live along with us. You have the first chance to jump into the Listener League. And again, if you finish first, it's a standard, league, $5 to jump in there. We're not going to overprice anybody, just a standard $5. We don't want to make it $100, nothing silly like that. Just have a little bit of fun. And if you happen to finish first, or at least first amongst those that are not on the show or our producers, probably shout out to producer TJ stepping in for producer Steve. Hope all is well with Steve. TJ stepping in tonight. TJ, you're welcome to jump in and join the Listener League as well. I don't know what happens if he wins because, obviously we assign a movie to everybody else, which we'll talk about later on in the show. And TJ is all about movies. You guys probably don't know this. You just met, but TJ works on his own movie and TV website. So he'll probably give us something Marvel related. Should we let TJ play? TJ, do you want to play?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll hop in for sure. I'll keep it outside of the MCU. I'll keep it outside of Star Wars. I write enough about that for agentsofFandom.com. So I'll keep it elsewhere. I got a few cooked up in the back of my mind already. So yeah, I'll hop in on occasion if I got some hot takes, and then for the end as well.
All right. Thanks again, TJ. Do appreciate you jumping in and producing the show. All right. So last time, Steeler Nation 60. Hit me up. We'll get you a month free of RG Premium. Anything else we should say, Rich, before we dive in and talk about the main slate, the 10-gamer?
No, let's run it.
All right. Very first game on the board. We have the Dolphins, big-time home favorites, 10.5-point favorites versus the Giants. 48.5 is the total, one of the bigger totals on the board. I ran some early optimals on a Wednesday night. A lot of Dolphins are popping, especially on Fanduel. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, as well. But, John, I'll let you go first. John, you set the table here as far as this game. Miami versus the Giants, Miami big-time favorites. They have that advantage, as always, early in the season with the heat, the cheat zone. The other team just gets scalded in the humidity, and Miami's chilling in their shade. How do the Giants keep this game close? They're also bad. I guess we should mention that too.
I guess that's what we are trying to figure out is how do we run it back? Because we still have no concerns about the Dolphins offense. A lot like when we talked about Puka's floor and everyone being disappointed about a 21% target share and 70 receiving yards. Like that was the Dolphins floor against the Bills. And they still had 10 passes of 15 plus yards, 6 runs of 10 yards. They had 398 yards of offense. They just happened to have 3 turnovers on their 6.9 yards per play. It got out of hand. But overall, we still have complete and utter confidence in Miami, whether it's double stacks with Tua, whether it's yet again trying to soak up all the touchdown equity like a couple weeks ago between the Broncos when everyone had stacked Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert. That's really what we're trying to figure out here with the Dolphins. So yes, who do we run it back with is the question. I don't think we are getting Saquon Barkley. And really more importantly, what we're seeing from the Giants is not only being able to not pass protect for Daniel Jones, which is also why even his rushing floor, the carries are there, but still the rushing floors are and points is slightly lacking, but just no explosiveness and no one else getting there through the air. Darius Slayton leading all wide receivers in routes so far, but as we saw on Monday night, hasn't mattered yet. Isaiah Hodgins, Rich has the cardio stats, has to be out there as a top cardio guy right now in 2 wide sets. And Wan'Dale comes back and everyone's excited for his 11 targets. I bet a key of this slate also, as I'm accidentally covering everything, will probably be like which receiver we're spending down for to spend up then at the rest of our positions, given that Wan'Dale, Josh Downs, and Rashee Rice are all just kind of tinkering around down there at the minimum 3K range. But even the 11 targets, whatever it's 3 yards downfield, like he's just a little slot guy there for floor play, not for a ceiling. So I can think that's kind of what we're sifting through here since we have all the confidence in the world in Miami.
Wan'Dale still a minimum 3K on DK that theoretically could be useful at some point, if depending on how value may or may not open up. We may get Jeff Wilson back this week. I'm not sure about Ahmed as well, but like the backfield for Miami is super cluttered. They're all good, right? Achane, Mostert. Achane is just outrageous. I mean, obviously the efficiency has to come down. He can't continue. What is it, Rich? You probably know. It's like 11 yards per carry or something goofy like that. It's outrageous. Scoring a touchdown in like every, 6 times he touches the ball or something. Yeah, he looks spectacular, but how much does it hurt if we see Wilson come back? It's a Wednesday night. We don't know how it's going to go down. And I'm not sure about Ahmed. Is he not expected? Is he going to be out for a little bit longer? Please feel free to clear. Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, he played 4 snaps. I think Achane if he's been uncorked, man. You can't put it back in the bottle. You just can't. You can't put it back in the bottle at this point. We joked about the player profiler thing with Chris Johnson, and what did you see? What have you seen all since then? Just a bunch of clips of Achane and Chris Johnson, right? A bunch of take. I don't see how they get him off the field, man. Like he's not going to be a guy that ever has like 20 touches, but he doesn't really need it. I feel like until he's priced up, you just got to keep playing him. Like, what is he, 6'1" this week on DraftKings? I think you just got to keep playing him. Especially if Mostert hasn't practiced, and it's early in the week. We record this Wednesday nights, so Mostert hasn't practiced. We don't know if Jeff Wilson's going to be back. Like I said, Ahmed played 4 snaps last week, and the Giants are just getting crushed. They're 30th in rushing points allowed per game to opposing running backs, 22nd in yards per carry, and they're probably going to be getting flooded. So, you're going to get a lot of opportunity here again for this running back, the backfield here to have a lot of opportunities. The Giants have not scored a touchdown in the first half this season. They have a minus 76 point differential in the first half of games. They're on a short week on the road in Miami against the team that literally they have 54 plays of 15 or more yards, the Miami Dolphins. The next closest team, the 49ers, has 34. So 20 more. The Giants are 30th in the NFL in that category. They can't generate any explosive plays. They can't pass block. They can't stop anybody defensively. Wink's going to send a bunch of blitzers at Tua. He's going to leave Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in man coverage. They're probably going to be down 24 points at halftime. This is the worry, though, because the Giants have done this twice. Cowboys week 1, last week in Seattle, and actually 49ers probably if you count week 3, like where they've just gotten the doors blown off of them and the brakes kind of get pumped by the opposing offenses. The 49ers kind of stayed on it, and Kittle and Debo got there. But Seattle completely took, and in the second half of the game did nothing. The Cowboys in week 1 did absolutely nothing. So that's your worry here, is that it's just such a boat race that maybe these guys come off the field in the second half, but by then they probably have so many points it doesn't matter.
John, you felt like you had something you wanted to add there.
I was in a position last week, we talked about it, where I thought the strategy to get an edge was Raheem Mostert at 3% is what he ended up coming up in, and like most mid and high stakes, just because you paid $800 more. But then because everyone had overthought, myself included, Achane, he came in, I think, around 7 to 10%. So it wasn't even like an edge, actually. It was kind of the same thing. So it's really just more of the same this week in DFS, where, like Rich said, I just think it's a situation where us trying to always get off the chalk or be contrarian or think around the edges away from the field, sometimes you just suck it up and play the guy.
I mean, if he's that good, though, if he ends up being that good, he doesn't have to necessarily be, CJ2K, but if he's a guy that they just have to keep, that's involved in this offense, which we know is explosive, generates all these explosive plays, they're going to score points every week. Like, you look at the guys, like he's just priced under, guys like Joe Mixon and, he should be 7K, man, right? Like he should be. So, I mean, until he gets there, I feel like we gotta just keep playing him.
Rich, am I wrong to think, in my head, I feel like the Dolphins, let's say, there's 12 minutes left in the game. They're up by 10. I feel like Mostert's more likely to be the running back out there grinding it out as opposed to Achane. He's got more of the build for that as well. Maybe Achane's already got his, and who cares? He already broke off like 2 50-yard touchdowns, right?
Or Jeff Wilson by the time he's healthy. You slog it up with Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, that's my only little concern is Achane doesn't feel like the kind of guy, but he's not.
I'll tell you what, if this game is within 10 points, Dean, with 12 minutes in the fourth quarter, this game busted. It means it's a low-scoring game. So
you like nobody in the Giants, basically.
I don't see a scenario where like this game pops and like the Giants are pushing 30 points, basically, as I'm telling you. If this game's within 10 points, that means Miami didn't get there.
Yeah, I wish I had a little more faith in Jalen Waddle, because we've seen he is the kind of player who can keep getting by on efficiency. But we've just really seen now, it's been 3 games. 1 he was injured in, yes. But last year, remember, he was second on the team by a wide margin, 22.5% of Tua's targets in those 13 games they played together. Tyreek was still up at 32.5%. It was still such a wide margin between those two. But now Waddle hasn't even been over 21% of the team's targets in any of his 3 games. You're really banking on explosiveness, and you probably can still get there. Like Rich said, given the amount of man coverage Wink is going to put the Dolphins in position in, but it's still tough whenever you're trying to weigh him and Tyreek.
He did have a touchdown come back last week on a legal man downfield, but yeah, he's been targeted on 17.8% of his routes. With Tua on the field last year, it was 25.4%. So pretty significant gap. Hill's always going to be there where he is, but we need that to rebound a little bit more, because going back to last year now, he has been outside of the top 30 scoring wide receivers in 9 of his past 11 games going into back last year. So like this isn't just a small sample to start this season. We saw it at the end of last season as well with Waddle.
It is baked into the price as far as Waddle on Fanduel. He's always
he's 6'8".
He's the most popular person hitting optimals I'm running on a Wednesday night grain of salt. But And Fanduel's pretty reactive as far as their their salaries. Not just the actual what's going on the field, but off the field. If you see Travis Kelce's price as well, people are flipping out over that. Very angry about Travis Kelce's price. I don't know what's breaking.
I mean, Waddle's the same price as Adam Thielen on FanDuel. So like,
yeah,
that says it all.
I mean, Thielen's been good for him, but like, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense, and he's going to be really popular. It's funny,
and all the guys in that price range, when you look at like Michael Pittman, George Pickens, I think Hollywood is probably underpriced, and Drake London, Josh Reynolds, like all those guys in that price zone of like within 500K of him, like that's like he still represents as much volatility like as those guys, but way more upside.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Marquise Hollywood Brown because he's the most popular player right now in DK optimals.
Yeah, he's way underpriced on DraftKings.
And like he's just the kind of guy like that you probably are supposed to get underweight on if he's going to be super super popular, right? Historically, at least. Is he still that guy though, Rich? Is he still like the boom bust, sort of like he's got to catch that 40-yard touchdown, or not necessarily? He's kind of different now.
No, he's a target hawk, man. I mean, look at the last 3 weeks with Hollywood Brown and Josh Dobbs is playing really well. And Josh Dobbs playing really well against the Cowboys and 49ers, mind you, as well. But the past 3 weeks, 46.5% of the team air yards, Hollywood Brown. He's got target shares of 34.5%, 33.3%, 24.4%. Like he's getting there more on like volume and floor than relying on like any splash plays.
Who wants to sell me on a Giants? The Dolphins, all the Dolphins look good. Typically people like to run it back. If you're running a Dolphin stack, you got Tua and two of his pass catchers. I saw what John, you threw out Wandale. He's cheap, right? He's $3K. That's a good argument, and he's probably going to be on the field. And I don't know if the argument ends there or not. But any Giants, a lot of people are very angry at Darren Waller, especially the season-long guys. He's not that one drive. It turns out was not a. I guess it's an outlier, that preseason drive where he was spectacular. But anything? I'm hearing crickets. I'm hearing Bueller. And does anybody want to sell me?
This offense has played 2 good quarters of football the entire year. Yeah. And the entire line is hurt. Like until Andrew Thomas comes back, like I mean, did you see like the guys in the backfield last week? Andy Dalton against that same defense, 6 days before almost scored 30 points.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so that's a no.
I mean, I have no problem. Like listen, man, if you're gonna punt on a 3K, I'm not gonna yuck anyone's yum on a 3K wide receiver.
He's going to get there, Wandale, just because, or an ownership at least, maybe not in fantasy points, just because of what he allows you to do. So he's a player I'm sure people will go to. Tight end, as always, is just as bad this week, unless you're trying to bring along Travis Kelce. We'll get there too. So maybe you could stuff Darren Waller in. Like we discussed tight ends last week against the Dolphins. And because of how Buffalo used their tight ends, because Josh Allen was really just going over the top at will, it really didn't matter. Dalton Kincaid still with his little 4-yard depth of target, but still, 4 catches, 27 yards. So maybe if you want to squeeze Darren Waller in just to try to have a stack in this game as a whole, that's fine.
How many Dalton Kincaid, 2 catches for 7-yard games does he have before like someone ranks him lower than tight end 10 every week?
I mean, he has more people commenting about how he's going to break out on that 4-yard depth of target than he does like actual fantasy points.
So you guys are probably doing this for season-long stuff, right? What's the difference between tight end 5 and tight end 15, like as far as your projection? So it's super tight, right? Like after a couple, it's basically all the same. You're just throwing darts.
Not even after a couple, it's like immediate.
I rounded up too much.
And like, what do you even do with guys like Waller, Dallas Goedert, George Kittle, like guys that are like more talented than like other tight ends that are even like semi loosely productive because in context of the position, guys are. But like how do you even like knock those guys down, right? Like you're like, oh, I want to bury Darren Waller. Like, cool. Am I gonna like rank him below like Logan Thomas? Like.
Yeah,
everyone is upset about Darren Waller, but like he was the tight end 4 in week 2, and I feel like that's fine. It's like, yeah, he's okay. He's the rest of these guys. They're all the same.
But I mean, George Kittle, we've been living this life for basically 3 years with George Kittle, right? Like, it's and Goddard's not doing anything. But like, how do you punish these guys at the position? No one at the position's doing anything. Are you gonna are you rushing out to get like Jonnu Smith to play over these guys? Because Jonnu Smith's had a couple good games. Like, I mean, it's rough, man. It's just rough in them streets.
Like even David Njoku is on bye week. Not that this is a season-long show, but like I was telling people, like, yeah, you could drop David Njoku because he had 11% target share with Deshaun Watson. He scored over 7 PPR points because Dorian Thompson-Robinson like can't even look up the field. Like that guy was not ready to play professional football in the NFL. So yeah, that's just the landscape of the position.
And
it was tough to see it was tough seeing the preseason heroes, Aiden O'Connell and Dorian Thompson. Robinson go down in flames when they finally had to play players actually starting in games.
I still want to have a little bit of faith in Aiden O'Connell. Whatever Khalil Mack is literally in your face every time you snap the ball, but maybe that's the Raiders' offensive line too.
Yeah, I mean, we can't write him after one game. And the Njoku thing, he should have got points just for his pregame attire. I don't know if you guys saw him walking into the arena; it was spectacular. He had his face covered. Yeah,
his fashion sense is so much better than his target share from Deshaun Watson. Yes, I agree. The pictures alone, you want to roster him, but then you roster him and you regret your decision immediately.
Also, Dean, I owe you an apology. Dude, Dalton Schultz scored a touchdown last week. After you told me, the Optimals want you to play Dalton Schultz, who didn't even have as many points all season as what you had projected for him. And he caught a touchdown from Devin Singletary. So the Fates were willing that one.
To be clear, I was not standing for Dalton Schultz. I was just reading what the optimizer spit out. I'm not going to take credit for that one.
Oh, no, I think we just play the optimal tight end every week. And we just swallow it. Like, you just tell us what tight end they want us to punt with. Do they want us to play Darnell Washington this week, Dean? We'll just do it.
I don't know who that is, but I think he's the new Pittsburgh tight end, right? And I don't know if he's a blocker or what he does, but he is 2.5 on DK, and maybe we'll talk about him later on the show. Surprisingly, on the Optimals, it's giving me Travis Kelce mostly, 42% on
That's
DK. It's finding money.
I'm happy you guys just brought up Pittsburgh because plugging in the optimal tight end may be the play on Wednesday, but by Sunday, I don't think so. It was Pat Freiermuth at like 25% ownership. So
3,400. Yeah.
Really not wanting to plug and play that one. That one didn't go well.
Yeah, it's a loose conversation as far as ownership on a Wednesday night, but this is the best we can do.
Yeah, is it going to be like defense? Remember, like whenever we have the chalk defense, you're like, well, we're just not going to play the chalk defense. We just do that with tight end now.
Yeah. Oh man, it's terrible. But several people in the chat. What's up, chat? We do appreciate y'all participating during the show. Hit that like button, do subscribe, do all those things. They're all asking about the reference I made to Travis Kelce as far as his price on FanDuel. He's not, FanDuel, everything is like $7,600, $6,800. He's $8,789, and I assume that's a nod to the album that Taylor Swift has called 1989. That's the reason why it's 89. I assume that's what's going on there. They're just having a little bit of fun, and people were flipping out because it's not a round number. He's essentially 8,800. Like that's it. Like just there's no other way to look at it, and they're just goofing around. But that's the reason why he's $8,789. Travis Kelce on FanDuel. He's not hitting optimals over there because it's a little bit trickier as far as pinch and pennies. We got anything else? Did you give the numbers, Rich? John kind of set you up there for Hodgins' his exercise.
Well, they kind of removed both those. Last week they did make a change Monday night. They started to play some of the young guys a little bit. Isaiah Hodgins and Paris Campbell both had their playing time significantly reduced. They ran Wandale ran 32 routes. Jalen Hyatt ran 30 routes. Jalen Hyatt, big exerciser too. I mean, listen, everyone out there, because you know what? The quarterback is sacked every time they drop back to pass. So no one's getting targets. They're all running sprints. But we did see a little bit of a change, unlike with Denver, who hates Marvin Mims still.
The Mims thing is so
Mims won them the game again, had another 48-yard pass, but will not. Maybe if he doesn't fumble early in that game, we see the run out, but he still got him the play they needed.
I will say, not that we're playing him, but in the first half, at least, Darius Slayton, it did change in the second half. And man, it's actually getting so frustrating personally, especially probably for Rich too, people who write all these games up. I can't recall a season where we're a month in and like never have I had to use like blowout game scripts to discuss player notes, because like every week there's like 6 to 8 blowouts across the board. And you just see like different players used in different quarters. And it's so obvious that some players are benched solely because their team is down by 20 points. And to that note, it didn't matter at all but Darius Slayton did run a route on 100% of dropbacks in the first half. Now, because it didn't matter, are we going to see a change to Jalen Hyatt or Wandale even more so against the Dolphins teams? I don't know. I think that's what we're trying to figure out. And does it matter? That's also what we're trying to figure out.
I was just going to say, I think Marvin Mims kicked Sean Payton's dog or something. Why? What are they doing to him? Like, I
They
don't
had
understand
11 players in that game get targets. This
So
absolute nightmare, Phil.
We talked about it last week, Dean, but it still holds true. Marvin Mims, 39 total routes on the season. He leads the Broncos in receiving yards.
I hope it happens. I want him to run like 100 routes and lead the team in receiving. I just for the chaos.
What an absolute disaster. All right, we're done with the Giants and Miami. Let's talk about Philadelphia and the Rams. Philadelphia and the Rams, it's a 40.5 total. Rams are getting 4.5 points. It is a Wednesday night here, John, but we think it seems like Cooper Kupp probably back. I don't know. It feels like he's going to be back. He's practicing. I don't think he practiced in full on a Wednesday, but I think he's going to be back. And it's sort of that weird, you guys don't play basketball DFS, but it feels like a basketball DFS situation where all the guys that were thriving in the absence of Kupp, now that Kupp's back, Kupp's going to be kind of overpriced, and everybody else is going to be overpriced because their price is based upon what they did when Kupp wasn't there. But I guess I'm curious how we handle this, and I guess we can sort of play it both ways. But it seems like that Kupp comes back this week against Philly. What do you have? What's your official read here as far as these receivers? Do we feel good about any of them dollar for dollar? Obviously, you can run them out there in tournaments, but as far as the actual price, I don't know how much value is still there if Kupp is back. What's your read, John?
We like the situation either way because starting top down, the Eagles are a very clear pass funnel. We've really only seen them in prime time, most recently against Baker Mayfield, who didn't get there, but everyone else has gotten there by leaps and bounds. Mac Jones was the QB2 in week 1 against them. Kirk Cousins was the QB2 against them. Sam Howell last week into overtime was the QB12. And those 3 guys who are statues, like Jalen Carter is on pace to finish as the defensive rookie of the year, but even his pass rush hasn't mattered for these statues who have averaged 323 pass yards against them. So I wish I had a more so than Cooper Kupp status. I wish I knew Matthew Stafford's hip injury if it was actually impactful, because if not, he is in a great pay down position in this game. One of the totals we have complete confidence in here.
Yeah, Kupp is 8.6 for what it's worth. Nakua is 7.7. Atwell 5.3. Jefferson 3.8. But I assume he would fall to the fourth, the fourth option there. Williams is just the running back basically every single down. I think they gave him a reprieve somewhat last week, but that was because they ran 75 plays or so. Rich,
well, they're running every game. They're first in the NFL in plays by far. They're running 70 plays a week.
And that's regression from last year. They averaged 58.5 plays per game last year. So pinpointing when that actually comes back, because I think it will come back eventually, pinpointing it in season is so hard, especially since it makes sense based on what went wrong for them last year.
What do you have here, Rich, as far as the Rams? And it's pretty clear Williams is their number 1 running back. Stafford, hopefully, if he's healthy and good to go. Generally speaking, I always drop my little qualifier. I like quarterbacks that have legs. He can certainly get there, 303. That's certainly doable, especially in the dome. But but also it's got to bake into the price. 5.6 is a pretty good price if you want to save some salary, and it feels like a spot where he's going to have to chuck it against Philly. Your read as far as these receivers, the asking price, Rich, if Kupp is in, how much does that hurt Nakua? We don't know. We're kind of sort of guessing, but what's your guess?
Yeah, I mean, I still think in DraftKings, you got a real good shot at the bonus for him not running on that site at that price. I think he's really drawing live. And the Eagles aren't bad against the pass, but they're facing 44 pass attempts per game. Mac Jones, Cousins, and Howell all have thrown over 40 passes in those games against them. Baker was the only guy who didn't. So we're getting that volume. We're finally getting that kind of second half pushback too, where now the Eagles have to throw too. Remember we talked about it ad nauseum last year about the Eagles are throwing, and it's really helping because I don't know if anyone's noticed, Jalen Hurts is running a lot less this year. Mm-hmm. He's only run for 33.5 yards per game over the opening month. He averaged 52.3 rushing yards per game as his first year as a starter, 50.7 yards per game rushing last year. So we need that. We need that boost because he's running a lot less. with the new coordinator. He's getting the brotherly shove now touchdowns, but we're not seeing like a lot of other designed runs like in the natural flow of the offense. A lot of his designed runs are those QB sneaks. And not the like RPO stuff that he was getting before. So we definitely need that pushback. We need the kind of the run. Last week he had his best passing game of the early season so far. So we love to see that. But that's what you're looking for, that volume there for the Rams side. With Kupp and Nakua, like that's all like guesswork. It's hard to say how it fits in. I will say Nakua is like not playing in the slot. Like he is playing like that Robert Woodsian role of pass. That's like what you're kind of hoping for, that it's like a Kupp Woods type situation, because Nakua is not just playing the Kupp role. Like he's actually playing a different position than Kupp was. So there is an opportunity for both these guys to coexist. I think the way Stafford's playing, there's an opportunity for these guys to coexist. Obviously, we have faith in Sean McVay. You just wonder who gets squeezed. I think Nakua will more or less be fine, but does Tutu start to get squeezed? His yardage has dropped every game of the season. Higbee's been pretty functional in tight end context, like we talked about. Does he end up getting squeezed? And then, like, dude, Kyron Williams, this guy, every time, man, he just takes my money, man. I want to fade this guy. He's been bad. Like, he's been legitimately bad, and it doesn't matter. Like,
doesn't matter.
Every time I want to fade him, he scores 2 touchdowns, and he has enough touches to, like, boost up all the yardage. And he did it to me again last week. So, like I said, I want to be pessimistic about him, but he just keeps body bagging me.
I nailed the Ayuk, McCaffrey, Diggs core, but it doesn't matter when you play Zach Moss over Kyron at the same price because you think you're sharp. That just tanked me from the very beginning.
Rich, you're a brotherly shove guy over the tush push. Is that a bold? Is that just happening to come out in the moment, or it depends on how you feel?
I was just being topical. I don't really mind what it's called. The Bush push from the old Matt Leinart days. Whatever you want to call it. Is it whatever, man? Well, remember it was Leinart pushing Reggie Bush pushing Matt Leinart is how it started. But I don't care what you call it. I'm not a big pushback on whatever the moniker you want to drop on that one.
As long as it's still allowed and everyone continues doing it, because it's heating up. Everyone's saying like only the Eagles can do it because they have Jalen Hurts and he squats over 600 pounds. But dude, everyone else that has tried it has done it so wrong. It's not even about Jalen Hurts. The Chargers had Josh Kelly behind Justin Herbert, and Kelly didn't even push Herbert. He just watched Herbert try to sneak into the center's ass. On Monday night, the Giants tried it with Daniel Jones, who's big enough to do it, but they tried it from a full yard away. Like, it wasn't even inches away. So, of course, like when you're trying to push the quarterback, he's not going to move like 2 freaking yards. Everyone else is just doing it wrong.
Like, Philly should keep doing it, but it's stupid, right? It's dumb that it's legal. Are you guys on board with that? Like,
I don't care.
Is this good football?
I mean, I don't know.
It's smart football. I like points.
Yes.
It moves the chains and gets the points. I support everything.
We assume rational coaching, Dean, too often when it doesn't exist. So I'm gonna like the fact that there actually is rational coaching going on. I'm not gonna pull back from it.
Fair. And again, I'm not knocking the coaches for calling it. By all means, keep doing it. It's infallible at this point. It's spectacular. It doesn't make for a great product. And as an overall, like I think the football's been bad this year. There's a lot of bad teams. I know you guys don't like the red zone, but you need red zone. These Allen games are rough. They are rough.
You're actually.
Well, so the Giants are on primetime every week. The Giants are on primetime every week. The Jets are on primetime every week. This is what we have to live with. The Giants play on Monday night, I think, in 2 weeks against the Bills. How do you think that's going to go?
If the Giants and Jets merge, they would be the blank best team in the NFL.
The Jets don't have a bad team. They just don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
Or an offensive line.
They still should have set them up for success better. I can't believe like these two teams, the Bengals and the Jets, like saw their backup quarterbacks, Zach Wilson and Jake Browning, play and then said, we're good with that. Like it's their own fault they're in this position.
John, what if I told you, sorry to cut you off here, Dean. What if I told you, I gotta remember that Dean doesn't keep an eye on the screen because otherwise he just
I see the screen
popping in. But what if I told you Zach Wilson may end up being my highest owned quarterback in MME this week?
Oh, okay.
Chiefs on board with me. We were talking about it on the Food for Thought podcast, but I'm going to attack that Broncos defense, and I'm mainly going to be doing it with Breece Hall, but I'm going to have a lot of Zach Wilson with those stupidly cheap receivers so I can pay up for my Justin Jefferson and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I think the Jets are going to be, in large field stuff, end up being popular because the Bears got there last week. And that was like the litmus test. People are like, well, the Dolphins scored 70 out of it. The Dolphins are great. And then like the mighty dormant Chicago Bears offense like went down the field and scored 28 points in the first half. And everyone was just like, yeah, this is the worst defense we've ever seen. So like and the fact that Zach Wilson averaged 6.3 yards per pass attempt, and everyone just was so thrilled. Like literally was like the holy grail, right? Like it was.
I never thought I would be in a position to like confidently fade Zach Wilson against the field, but I feel like that's where we're at this week. Everyone is so excited to play Zach Wilson.
I mean, no quarterbacks are ever going to be chalky. Like in DFS, like the ownership will never be high enough to where you really have to fade a quarterback that you like. And I doubt he gets to even like double-digit %. But I think he unironically though will be a stack that people play in MMEs because of the Broncos factor and the fact that he looked semi-competent on Sunday night.
Obviously subject to change, but he's currently projected 1% on the
Wednesday night,
and sub 1% on the Blitz projection.
I'll take the over on 1%. My early Wednesday bet will be over 1%.
Justin Simmons coming back as well. We'll see. Broncos actually were the defensive 7 in fantasy last week, despite making Justin Fields look like Joe Montana.
And the week before when they gave up 70 points because Marvin Mims ran a kickoff back.
That's why I've been trying to figure out how do I play the Broncos defense like in an optimal spot with the Jets, trying to sort through it all.
Well, Denver got a fumble returned or something like that. Did they score a touchdown defensively last week? Yeah, I mean, those things happen. There's goofy stuff happening.
When you get that much volume, and now you have Zach Wilson on the other side, you can get there.
Yeah, that's a reasonable point for sure. But certainly, we're going to be testing the limits of Jets offense versus Denver defense. Steve Atwater, Tom Jackson, they're not walking through that door. But how about the individual pieces
Carl
of Philadelphia?
Mecklenburg.
There you go. That's a good name. It's a good football name. John, what do you have as far as Brown? AJ Brown looks spectacular. Sure. Smith. I saw somebody talk about Goddard in chat. That's another tight end. That's like whatever. And he feels kind of sort of lost in the shuffle, but certainly you can play him. Who's our priority if you want to stack with Hurts?
It's still AJ Brown, in my opinion, who's now kind of these last 2 games broken out and lapped the field in comparison to Devonta Smith. And Devonta has battled through an injury these past 2 weeks. Maybe that's still lingering her hair, but still 43 targets to Devonta's 29, commanding 44% of the team's air yards. So he's getting these targets downfield as well. Just how much volume he's seeing overall right now, it's massive compared to Devonta's opportunity. So that I think would be the ideal lean here. Dallas Goedert, it's just the fact that he's not getting the volume. And like the Dalton and K, Rich already alluded to all this. It's just another guy who's 31st in depth of target among all tight ends. Where he's seeing his targets, he's basically the safety valve underneath. And that just doesn't get us there at tight end, like doesn't give us the ceiling.
Rich, your thoughts? I guess we can mention Swift as well. Gainwell is lurking. He's a person, but Swift probably the ideal running back there for Philly. The Philadelphia, skill position players, who do you want to prioritize?
Yeah, this game in general, I think, is fun for stacking purposes because there's so many ways to go about it. I mean, you can do Hurts doubles. You can get unique and add Goddard. You can, add a guy like Kyron Williams to it. If Kupp comes back, does that mean people are just scared of what Puka will do? And then Puka doesn't get played. And then he becomes a value. You can run DeAndre Swift back with Ram stacks. Like there's a lot of ways to go about this game. There's a lot of ways for this game to kind of pop and everyone kind of get a piece too. So this game is largely fun. I mean, because the Rams have been competent and defensively, they've been competent too. Like they did, I think we expected them to be one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They're certainly not good, but they're lively. And they are giving up production to tight ends if you want to get weird with Goddard in larger field stuff. I don't know if single entry you need to go that route, but in larger field stuff, you're probably going to need to get a little bit more unique on how you just stack these guys. I think you will see a lot of if Stafford gets played. Well, maybe Stafford. Maybe I'm not even. I want to walk back on that because if Cup plays, it might just drive. People are just like maybe get froze, right? Like they just don't know what to do, so they don't do it, and that might help the field. That might help you out.
What about playing Cup? Like we paid 10K
Sure.
before, 9K, but do you think they fully unleash him his first game back? Is kind of
They've been adamant that like Sean McVay's been adamant that like he's not going to play unless he's ready to fully play.
Right.
Like they've talked about like on par performance, like no ramp up or anything else. That's what they've sold us. Now, how true will it be?
Do you believe
remains to be seen. But like, I don't know. There are some whispers behind the scenes, like he has what like Rocco Baldelli had, that same injury that he had, and like he met with Baldelli in Minneapolis. Like that's why he was there. So like, who knows, man? Maybe this is it. But, we'll just he's gonna burn hot and bright one last season for us, and then ride into the ether.
Didn't Rocco Baldelli retire at like 25 or something?
29, I think 28 or 29.
Okay. Yeah,
he had the same thing. He had like a muscle fatigue issue. And there was like there was some whispers behind the scenes that like that's what Kupp was getting checked out for.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot to keep an eye on there, but like that is interesting. And you never really know what the coaches. Some coaches are more apt to lie than others, and also like game situations change, and maybe he's not feeling great mid game. Like these things can happen too. You really can't predict. But that is, I'll tell you,
they've never told us. They've never labeled Kupp's injury ever. He had a hamstring injury, but then like they've just when he had the re-injury, they've literally just called it muscle.
They sent him to Minnesota for a long time and just said, "All right, IR. We'll see you in 4 weeks."
That's where that's where I said like that there was whispers he met with Baldelli like about the same injury and stuff like that because
it's like
coaches with twins, right?
Hockey playoffs, lower body injury. He's got a lower body, upper body.
I mean, you saw the clips of him today. Like the clips, he looked great. And I don't know like how to judge any of that stuff. I can't tell if like a guy's fit or anything, but he looked full speed from what I saw today.
It's the same thing you mentioned last week, Rich, with not being able to get Jaleel McLaughlin's carry inside the 10-yard line in week 2 off your mind.
Yeah.
I do keep going back to those quotes from the preseason that you said. Sean McVay was so confident. He just said, listen, he said it 3 times now. Listen, like Kupp's not playing unless he's 100%. And now we're here. And so if Kupp plays, like, why wouldn't I play him below 7K?
Yeah. Wait, 7K. Where is he? Was he below 7K somewhere?
Isn't he 6,800 on DraftKings? Did I get that price wrong?
No, he's 86.
Oh, 86. Got it. Sorry, mixed it up.
Yeah. I don't know what he is on FanDuel. I did not check the FanDuel price, but I don't think it's anything goofy. 8.5 coming out the gate on FanDuel, 8.6 on DK. But we have paid in the past 10K for Kupp. Like I think optimal Kupp was like 10K, and we were doing it happily.
Yes.
So yeah.
I mean, what if they have 50 dropbacks? Like, there's enough here.
All right. Let's talk about the third game on our 3 main games. Kansas City, Minnesota. Minnesota getting 4. The line has moved in favor of Minnesota. I believe they were getting 5.5 earlier in the week. And that's kind of dropped. KC now just a 4-point favor in the dome of Minnesota. 52.5 is the total. This is the biggest total on the board this week. I don't know who to pair with Patrick Mahomes. Hopefully Rich can. If not Kelsey, then who? And even Kelsey, small sample, hasn't been great this year. We finally seeing him old, and it's not been great. But no more than 70 yards. He's yet to get double-digit targets. I think 9 or 8, but sure. If you want to cut it off at double digit, he's not gotten there just yet. He's expensive though. If you're going to prioritize him, he's got to get there. But also, he's a tight end that can separate and he can score like twice as many fantasy points as the number 2 guy. So that can matter as well. How are you handling Kansas City? Pacheco, by the way, is popping in a lot of stuff I'm seeing early in the week.
We talked about FanDuel earlier not moving prices. They finally moved Pacheco a little bit, but you could argue that it's still too cheap, especially 1 week after he handled a career high 77% of the Chiefs' backfield touches on FanDuel. So still interesting there. But the Vikings, I mean, we talk about it every week, how Brian Flores just really doesn't change the plot at all. It's been the same thing. Mahomes was blitzed on only 28% of his dropbacks last year, 33rd among quarterbacks, but still led the league with 17 touchdowns against the blitz. Everyone knew the season prior too, that you just can't blitz Mahomes. And this season, we're seeing that again. To this point, blitzed on only 15% of his dropbacks. But then here comes Flores, who probably doesn't care, given that the Vikings have ranked top 2 in blitz rate in all 4 games so far this year. So if we're sending the house every single time and Mahomes is expected to pick you apart, That's really the question, is who we're stacking with, because Kelsey at least acts like a blocker, like you're rostering Kelsey over TJ Hawkinson in that sense. But then where do you go from there? And given trying to save salary to get up to Mahomes and Kelsey, I think naturally Rashee Rice gets dragged along. Everyone's seeing the recent target per route run rates thrown onto social media for Rashee Rice. Also has, just in general this season, 13% of the team's targets compared to 10% for Sky Moore. But they're still using everyone. That's the whole point. Like even Justin Watson and Marquez Valdes-Scantling aren't running around on 80% of dropbacks because they're literally getting every single person involved, whether it's the first quarter, the first half, blowout game scripts. They're just throwing these guys in there. So it's still just so tough.
Rich, you have any minutes? Pretty clear. It does seem like Rice is like getting more is getting less.
Moore's route participation has dropped the last 2 weeks. Rashee Rice has been around 51%, 48% of the team dropbacks. Still, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the number one exerciser in the league still this year. Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
It was probably like minus 150 before the year too.
Yeah, out of all wide receivers to run 100 more routes, he's only been targeted on 8% of his routes. By far the lowest. Van Jefferson behind him, then Donovan Peoples-Jones are the sub 10% guys. So your number 1, 2, and 3 exercise of the season have been answered. But Sky Moore is basically now getting his playing time reduced. Rashee Rice is going up. They're both still behind Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Justin Watson, guys that are running around out there. It's so hard to pay for Mahomes and Kelsey because you're paying for 2 onesie positions, right? Like from like a game theory stance, it's hard to pay up at both of those spots because then you have to allocate salary to running backs and wide receivers. And then if you play both those guys, you're playing a lot of punts at positions that have higher ceilings. And Kelsey, we've seen that this year, even though Kelsey can even offer a little bit of leverage. He's led all tight ends in target share and target per route runs since he's come back. But the huge run out is just not comparable to what we're getting from guys like Christian McCaffrey or any of the high priced wide receivers. So it's different when Kelsey's competing on that level. He's worth that kind of salary, but he's not competing at that level. So how do you allocate your salary there? I think it's really tough. And then Mahomes is the type of guy that can have 3 passing touchdowns. He can get there on his own, but they can go to all 3 whack-a-mole guys that don't even pop from a value stance, right? Like you can play Rashee Rice and he can score a touchdown, but what if he has 34 yards, right? Sure, you 3X your 3,600 guy, but can he get 20 points? Probably not, right? He probably isn't going to get there. That's what makes the Chiefs so damn hard every week. The Viking side's pretty clear, right? Like we can play Cousins because we have this sample of when the Vikings have to throw, when they play teams that they have to punch up with, they get oodles of passing volume. I wrote about this last week when they faced Carolina, that if you look at under Kevin O'Connell, their pass rate below expectation games, they're all versus non-playoff teams. They faced one last week and they threw 19 times. And then you start to see the chinks in the armor too, because we've been talking about ad nauseum about how TJ Hawkinson has been a player that has been thrust up by just how much the Vikings throw and how many routes he runs. And what happens when they throw the ball 19 times? He's a complete busto. Now we flip that though, and he's going to be probably, I think if you pay it for a tight end, I think Hawkinson's the guy you want this week because the Chiefs are also bad against tight ends. They're 31st in catch rate allowed to tight ends. They're 28th in yards per target allowed to tight ends. And then we're probably going to get that passing volume. So I think if you do pay for a tight end in this game, I think it's Hawkinson. And Cousins' price on both sites is still affordable where you actually can run doubles with him still and then play Pacheco or even play Rashee Rice, right? You can still onslaught this game that way.
Yeah. You mentioned, Jefferson you didn't mention. Obviously, Jefferson's spectacular, but he's expensive. Like Mahomes, Kelsey, Jefferson's, I don't want to say impossible, but really, really hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
Osborne, Addison. Osborne's still running ahead of Addison, right? I believe he is as far as routes and targets and all that stuff. Addison's more expensive. The one eventually is going to unseat him, but Osborne's 4-1, Addison's 5-3. Amongst those two, when you consider salary, Rich, who do you prefer as far as Osborne and Addison?
I mean, Addison's had the most big play potential, right? Turning a target into something huge. That's kind of the angle I would play, but I think both of them are pretty thin plays. I think you want to focus in on, Jefferson and Hawkinson. Obviously, And if the Chiefs are an aggressive defense too, Spags plays a lot of man coverage. If they are brave enough to play a lot of man coverage against Justin Jefferson, he's averaging almost 5 yards per route run against man coverage so far this season. When teams have been brave enough to play man coverage against the Vikings, he's got 40% of the targets. Like if Kirk Cousins is diagnosing man coverage, like, dude, we know where the rock's going. So we'll see if Spags, how aggressive he wants to get here. I assume he knows those stats too as well. So we'll see what he wants to do. But I mean, I think you focus on that angle. I mean, Cousins is cheap enough too, where you can play Cousins, as a cash game quarterback if you want to, where he's at. I think he's completely palatable there as well.
Interesting. I ran, the optimals earlier, and we're spending up on good quarterbacks, right? 32% went to Tua. This is on DK. 32% went to Tua, 20% to Hurts, 11% Mahomes, 10% Richardson, 8% Russ Wilson, and 7% Kirk Cousins. Stafford 6 for what it's worth. That's basically all that hit. And this is a Wednesday night, grain of salt, just kind of mentioning it. John, your thoughts as far as Minnesota? We didn't mention Madison. I think, what did they say? Hot hand last time. Akers is lurking now. Do we bother with either one of these guys against Kansas City? Is there some value in Madison still at 5-7?
I think it's only headed one direction in Minnesota because both Akers and Madison averaged over 5.5 yards per carry against that bad Panthers defense, who will be mentioned again for the running back opposite them this week later in the show. But for Madison, it's just the fact that a season low in snap rate, 66%, a season low in his share of Minnesota's backfield touches, and then basically split routes run with Cam Akers 11-6. That trend usually only goes one direction despite being the quote hot hand. So he wasn't getting there anyways. Like we were playing him just based on volume, but now I would argue that volume continues being cannibalized more and more every week from Cam Akers, both who are not good options in that case.
Did you have any general thoughts this week, John, as far as the, not 12 games, but 10 games, we're getting 4 late, 6 early, 4 late. I know you like to go through it and talk about potential pivots late. This Kansas City, Minnesota game is late. Have you seen anything? Also, Philadelphia and the Rams is late, so you can kind of backload stuff, and there's some good pieces. Yeah. Jets, Broncos, late as well. Cincinnati, Arizona, which I don't know what we're going to do with that, but theoretically, there's some good spots there we can talk about.
The players are going to be played in those games.
Yeah.
We just talked about the Jets. I mean, people are going to get to at least some Jets. Like we said, they're not going to be chalky, but like people are going to get there to those guys. We'll probably talk about Breece Hall too as well. But in the Bengals side, like, it's going to be interesting kind of what plays out there because they're in another good spot again. But, how many times do we have to be fooled by this Joe Burrow thing?
It's a backloaded slate for sure. 6 games early, but we're talking about Houston, Atlanta, whatever. Tennessee, Indy, Carolina, Detroit.
Listen, man, the Colts are the team. Like, people are sleeping on Colts games. Like, the Colts are like a fun over team, like weekly.
Yes.
This week is going to be so interesting for Anthony Richardson and like his toughest run defensive spot to date. But the way he plays, the way Shane Steichen coaches, he can still obviously hit his ceiling, especially if he's going to go overlooked only 1 week after being like the clear cash game option.
Yeah. And John, did you happen to have any sort of thoughts, any sort of takeaways? Have you gotten that far as the research with the 4 late games, 6 early, or not just yet?
Not for late pivots. It'll obviously be Bengals Cardinals. That will be the least roster game, I would guess, right now between those other 2 marquee matchups we mentioned. And what makes it interesting is that like the chalk running backs, Bijan, Montgomery, a couple others, they are in the first slate of games. So then you will have to decide your stacks basically based on which running backs you roster or pivot up from in the first slate.
We got anything else as far as Kansas City, Minnesota? Rich or John, either one of you, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we'll move on. We are moving on. Going to give our favorite plays position by position, quarterback, receiver, a couple, here and there, and even maybe tight ends if that happens. I guess favorite's probably not the right word for tight ends. We'll give a few recommendations at tight end, I suppose. Don't come back at us if it does not work out. Before we do that, we do want to mention our friends at Ticketmaster. More memories are made when you're there for live NFL action. When you need tickets, Ticketmaster, they got you covered. As the official marketplace of the NFL, Ticketmaster, they give you more ways to find your perfect seat. Their interactive seat map gives you 360-degree previews of your section to make sure you have the best view for the most pivotal of plays. If your plans happen to change, if you happen to have tickets this week in Denver, Ticketmaster gives you the flexibility to sell or transfer your tickets. Plus, mobile tickets, they make getting in on game day a breeze. You can even customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your team's colors. Find tickets today, Ticketmaster.com/NFL. All right, let's get through this. Knock out a couple of our favorite quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. We'll talk movies later on. John, your favorite quarterbacks we've not yet mentioned this week are who?
We've touched on a lot of my pool, but I will add Anthony Richardson because on one hand, it's a tough spot for him. He'll always be projected with a high ceiling just based on the way he plays. He's leading all quarterbacks in rushing fantasy points per game at 13.5. He's one of only 2 quarterbacks averaging double-digit rushing points per game as well. At the same time, though, like the Titans' run defense has historically trickled down under Mike Vrabel to quarterbacks as well. Not only Deshaun Watson, 4 carries for 16 yards this year, but going back to last year too, Jalen Hurts only got 12 rushing yards on them. They held Josh Allen to 10 yards. Daniel Jones only had 25. So they have been good. But really what we've seen so far is Anthony Richardson's floor still, since he hasn't unlocked his passing ceiling. And so even if we get like half the rushing production in this game, because it's not a rushing ceiling game, like everyone's getting there unless you're Joe Burrow against the Titans secondary. So I kind of want to mess around and see like, oh, is this a ceiling performance for the game? Like Rich even said, the way Steichen's coaching this team, like leading the league in no huddle rates, tied for the league lead in drives per game as well. It's just one, like given the pace and plays and having a miserable defense that we just always want to be on top of. And so if we're getting Richardson at lower ownership this week compared to last week, I think it's a good spot.
All right, Rich. And I just want an official, Rich, give me a take as far as Burrow. What are we doing with this guy? And like he crushed me last week. Theoretically, he should be in a good spot here against Arizona in the Dome. Do we think he's hurt? I mean, I don't want to be a Twitter doctor.
He's hurt.
Is he too hurt? I guess is the problem. Yeah.
It's tough, right? Because he's playing this really passive defense. Arizona, they don't blitz. They don't play man coverage. They sit back and play a lot of zone. They don't get any pressure on the quarterback. The offensive line has been bad. They're exclusively running out of shotgun now. They're trying to get the ball out quick. It's just really tough. It's a tough offensive scheme. I mean, I think in that game, if you do like anyone, the guy that kind of stands out is Joe Mixon. Like you think if they're gonna like pivot at some point and adjust, and like it would be to run the football more. And Arizona's been so bad against the run. Like they've allowed a top 15 scoring running back in every game this season. They've allowed a top 3 scorer twice. They're 26th in rushing points allowed per game to running backs. They're 30th in receiving points per game allowed to running backs. It's been consistent every week. He's the guy I think if you can't get there, because like in your quarterback player pool, there are too many good quarterbacks for me to get to Joe Burrow, right? Like I don't need to be cute with Joe Burrow. There are too many other good quarterbacks.
It's not necessary.
That's why like I know Chase is on both of our player pools, Rich, because it's like last week, we didn't know Burrow was still injured, especially after he was cleared on Friday. So on the weekend, like he certainly entered my pool. Also because like you could block Tanner Hudson, the cash game play with Chig Okonkwo and just say, screw it. Like if this stat goes off, even if I'm underweight on the field, like we know who's going off for these teams. But yeah, now like we just go to Chase. That's it. We don't need to play Burrow with it. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, since
he's not officially ruled out, is he?
No, but he's got broken ribs. Like
it's kind of like
a pain tolerance thing, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, since Chase has been in the NFL, he's been targeted on 32% of his routes when Higgins hasn't played. It really hasn't been a huge bump for Tyler Boyd since Chase has been on the roster. I mean, he still did have another 33% of the targets last week, and he's still getting a truckload of work. But I mean, where's the ceiling? I mean, we did see 2 weeks ago he got there with a bunch of catches, but like, where is like the old Chase that like can house that 8-yard slant, right? That's what we're looking for. The Cardinals have been just as bad defensively though as kind of we thought as advertised. Gannon has them fighting, but I mean, against everything, I just laid out the stats against running backs, but against wide receivers, they're 30th in yards per target allowed to wide receivers, 29th in catch rate, 27th in yards per catch allowed. So I mean, the wide receivers have been beating them up too.
Did they manufacture catches for him? I feel like they did that probably because
He's
of the
playing in the
injury.
slot more. He's playing in the
Yeah.
slot more than he ever has. His first that compared to his first 2 years in NFL, and that's good coaching, right? Like that's rational coaching. We have a quarterback that's hurt. Our offensive line can't block. We got to get rid of the ball hot. What do? We move our best receiver inside, so he can be the beneficiary of those targets. So we're not throwing him to Trent Irwin and Tyler Boyd.
Did you have a quarterback you wanted to share, Rich? I forced you to talk about Joe Burrow, but anybody that we've not yet talked about, you want to throw into the conversation?
No, I mean, we covered, I think, everyone in my pool, even Richardson. I mean, Richardson now is averaging almost a full point, not a full point. So he's averaging 0.452 fantasy points per snap played. Josh Allen is second at 0.362. So he's like almost like fully above him. Which is pretty crazy. Obviously, we're going to have a game where Richardson doesn't have a rushing touchdown, and then we'll see kind of where his median lies. But like Daigle said, like the Colts defense is bad. They're running a ton of plays. Dude, he completed 44% of his passes last week, and it didn't matter. It just didn't matter.
Deshaun Watson got there. Like we could get Richardson there against this secondary.
All right, let's talk about running backs. Rich, I'll let you start.
We got to start with Bijan, man. Like Bijan's the guy who's got at least 4 catches in every game. He's averaging 6 yards per carry. His participation has just gone up every week of the season. He's coming off handling a season high 70% of the Atlanta backfield touches. And now he's getting this Houston defense that is picked up where they were a year ago. 27th in rushing points allowed per game to backfields, 26th in points per touch allowed to running backs. They're the only team that has allowed 20 PPR points or more to every backfield in the game, every game this season so far. So you remove Christian McCaffrey for the slate. If nobody on Fanduel, he's cheaper than David Montgomery too. What a life David Montgomery is living.
We said Fanduel's really reactionary when Montgomery came up.
I mean, he's a great play too, by the way. David Montgomery is a great play objectively when you remove salary from the equation. The Lions, once again, are just so run heavy. They've run 24 plays inside the 10-yard line. They've run the ball on 71% of them. Inside the 5-yard line, they've run 10 plays. They've run the ball on 8 of them. We watched Jamal Williams do this last year, and we've got a better player in that role. And Carolina is another one of these teams that have just been miserable against the run.
And miserable on offense. So it sets up game script wise. Game script wise, too, sets up for David Montgomery, given the Bryce Young offense on the other side.
And then the one jet that I do think is going to be popular, because we flippantly talked about Zach Wilson, like people might talk themselves into some jets. And Garrett Wilson, where he's priced, will get played. The guy who's going to be relatively like popular in the stance of like projected ownership. And again, we're talking like these early season projected ownerships. Like we haven't yet to run into a guy like where you have to like outright fade because of chalk, except for maybe Josh Kelly the 1 week. Like we haven't been there with like the 40% guys, right? Like it hasn't really been there. But Breece Hall, I think, is going to be the guy kind of people get to at his price. And Robert Saleh coming out and saying that he is no longer going to be on a restriction for snaps and touches because the Broncos to start the season have allowed the RB1 in week 2 to Brian Robinson, the RB1 in week 3 to David Achane, and then RB2 in that same week to Raheem Mostert. And then last week, Khalil Herbert got there as the RB8. So I think people, if they're going to talk themselves into really anyone as being like a relatively popular jet, this will be the guy.
So he's not going to be Kyron Williams, right? There's a lot of wiggle room between what Breece Hall was and where he can go. What are we expecting out of Hall? What would your anticipation be? Touches, I'll set the over-under at 17.5. We got the over or the under, John?
Oh, I would say under. I would say under by quite a bit personally.
So then isn't he getting like 14 or 15? Or opportunities, I guess I should say. I probably shouldn't say touches.
I was hoping to play him on like 12 to 15 touches, but given his price and given that everyone wants to play him, and you could kind of see it coming by Monday, you were like, oh, this matchup is already setting up well for Breece Hall. Everyone's going to be on him. It's unfortunate. I'm just gonna have to see where ownership goes because I do want to play him. His share of the team's backfield touches have been at least relative to this matchup, fine the past couple of games. He's seen 52%, so he's handling over half of the touches. Dalvin Cook, I mean, just doesn't matter. Like this dude, his highest finish so far is RB33 in PPR points per game. And now we're saying we're going to keep on removing touches as they've done the past 2 games. Then sure, we give Breece Hall more. But I don't know. I think it just comes down to ownership. So I'm going to see where the field goes.
Let's see. Sean in chat says 20 touches easily. Wouldn't say easy. Maybe it's certainly possible.
You're
Wouldn't
playing
shock
Michael
me.
Carter too. It's really weird. That's how you know
Yeah.
Dalvin. They know Dalvin Cook is dust those because Michael Carter's picking up like all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's over. What's the most memorable part of the Dalvin Cook run there for the Jets? What are you going to remember when he's no longer? I don't know. I got nothing off the top of the head, to be honest. But like, what do you need is the other part of it, right, Rich? Like,
He's 5,400.
Yeah.
Say he catches 4 passes and you get like a long touchdown, which, man, I can't believe he didn't score on that one last week. I thought for sure he was going to score, where he kind of threw his lineman kind of in his own way. But I thought when he got out in the space, I was like, oh, I couldn't believe that guy tackled him.
It was a one-on-one. Yeah, I think Breece Hall last year breaks that. But Breece Hall this year still clearly recovering. Yes, someone catches up to him.
And this was the spot where he tore his ACL. You think there's any narrative street involved here? Motivation?
Javonte, what did Javonte tear on the other side? These are the top 2 running backs from last year as far as the draft. I think that's right.
Javonte's was worse. Javonte tore ACL and MCL. I think it was. It was much more gnarly.
Okay, so
Yeah,
Halls
his was
against
more in
Denver?
line with the Dobbins injury.
Yeah. But these were the top 2 running backs in the last year's draft, right? Unless I'm missing somebody. Is that correct? I forget the drafts.
No, you're right.
Together. Yeah. We had it earlier in the year with Atlanta versus Detroit.
No, 2 years ago. Javonte was drafted 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Misremembering.
You forget the
It
years
was Kenneth Walker. It was Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker last year.
There
you
you
forget
go.
the forget the year Hall was buried. Or no, Javonte was buried behind Melvin Gordon.
I do. I forgot that happened. Yes. Oh my God.
Life comes at you fast.
And Gordon's still getting some run, right, with Baltimore. That's still a thing, I guess. Or I mean, he's not playing it, but I think he still gets to wear a uniform and everything. All right. We got anything else as far as running backs, or shall I move on and talk about
Daigle didn't name any.
I like.
I'm sorry. My apologies.
I'll add James Conner to the pool of players. Given the game script, the Bengals rush defense also. They are allowing the second highest rate of explosive runs for 10-yard gains. They're one of only 3 different defenses allowing over 5 yards per carry. Imari DeMarcado did mix in on some pass catching downs, but on the first half splits alone, James Conner outcarried him 10-0. He still ran 11 routes to DeMarcado's 7, and they had 2 targets each. So Conner being mixed into the passing game enough and handling all the carries is more than enough in this kind of spot for him.
DeMarcado, he's ahead of what's the guy's name?
He's hurt.
Yeah.
Ingram's dinged, right?
Ingram had a late week neck injury that scratched him.
Okay. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else. Stevenson. Does anybody ever a Stevenson take? He's been kind of disappointing. I know there was a report last week that's kind of goofy about Zeke was going to start over him, but he does have a pretty good price, and he is at least popular earlier in the week.
He should have a pretty good price. They should.
Do you want any part of this New England offense? He's 5'6" on TK, 6'1".
Not much in this matchup either. I mean, this has to be one of the lowest totals on the board, right?
Yes, it is. It's actually, let's see, 40.5, but even lower than that by 2.5 points is Baltimore-Pittsburgh at 38, which is just
because of the Steelers, But there's been 44 running backs that have 25 or more carries this season so far. Stevenson, 40th in yards per carry, 40th in explosive run rate, 36th in rate of runs that have gone for a first down or touchdown. Other than that, it's going really well.
He's not
is
even
the line terrible, or is he all of a sudden bad? Is it small sample stuff? Or
I think it's just a combination of all the above.
Yeah. He's not even getting like what he was best at last year in running routes. Like he's also not getting that whatsoever. He's running around on just 50% of dropbacks. Like that's not what Stevenson should be doing for fantasy points, because they are. The report was a little bit blemished that Zeke was going to come in and be the starter and get more reps. Zeke didn't even play on the opening drive, but Zeke is still being used just enough annoyingly to where, like, in this low floor offense, it's taking away from everyone.
Yeah, I think that's the way to phrase it, is that even if Stevenson, I think, gets there, like, I don't feel like I'm going to get bodied by him.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Like Breece Hall, I feel like if I don't play Breece Hall at 5,400 and the field is like playing him, I'm like, that I do have a little fear that like that's gonna look dumb.
I also didn't think I would get bodied by not playing Kyron Williams, and like I kind of
Yeah,
sort of did.
that's
Yeah,
every week.
I felt that one a couple times.
Just taking it to the face.
Please don't remind me. That hurt so much last week.
By the way, Atlanta, you guys mentioned Atlanta playing this week. I thought, wasn't it always a thing when you go to London, you have like a bye week the next week, or is it the team's choice and they passed on it?
Yeah, it's a team's choice. Like teams have been passing on it because of the early, like they'd just rather have a later bye week than early in the season.
Okay, and this is
someone
the very
did the
first
math
time
on it, and it's like it's actually like less like you're like back home than you would be like on like if you were to go like a West Coast trip. Like you're actually back like in your own time zone before then. So like there's more like time to calibrate afterwards. Like someone did the math on it a couple years ago because the Colts were the first team a couple years ago that just like we're not doing this.
The Bills still got so screwed out of a home game, playing against a team like Jacksonville that just gets to hang out in London for the week as well and prepare for them. Like the Bills like dominate the Dolphins, arguably Josh Allen's career best game, and their reward is now to use a home game in London instead.
Allen just crushes the Dolphins, man, every single time. There's BVP in baseball. I don't know, a quarterback versus team. I don't know if that's a thing, but
and
it was a thing.
So good. He was so good.
He absolutely smashes them. We're going to talk. I mentioned I saw Atlanta because I was thinking of Kyle Pitts, 3.3K on DK.
Begging you.
Like, please.
How much is Jonnu Smith? Is he more or less? I haven't looked at that. I'm kind of curious.
He's got to be less.
29, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, tight ends. Who wants it first? Not everybody at once. Raise your hand.
I'll talk about wide receivers first.
Oh my God! Yeah, bad job by me. Go ahead. Let's knock out some receivers. What do you have for me, Rich?
Obviously, we'll do Garrett Wilson. We'll just run talk about all the Jets. But I think the one guy that's like floating around in that price zone, I don't think anyone wants to play because he's been kind of not. He hasn't really done anything for a few weeks. He's been hurt. But DeAndre Hopkins, definitely like the volume is still there per route. And I just want to target guys against this Colts team, man. I mean, they play the lowest rate of man coverage in the NFL. They play all this soft zone. They're allowing 24 PPR points per game to opposing wide receiver ones. Calvin Ridley, 8 for 101 and a touchdown. Nico Collins, 7 for 146 and one. Zay Jones at 8 for 48 in the rain. Puka last week, we were all over his splits against the zone. I get it, man. Like DeAndre Hopkins very much looks like he's in the very Michael Thomas-y zone, but he should have had a long touchdown last week that Tannehill just overthrew him on. But I feel like he's just, kind of in a nebulous price zone where people aren't going to get to him. And I think that I want to play pieces of that game. And I definitely going to play Ryan Tannehill.
Where's Hopkins on the dusty scale? You kind of referenced it. Like he's not full dust, right, Rich?
He's not like he's like somewhere between like Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, and and then like Larry Fitzgerald, like Kyler Murray, like in between, like those.
Okay, fair enough.
He's getting a ton of targets. A ton of targets, and he's getting 29.8% of his routes run. He's been targeted on. Like they're jamming him with targets. So oh man.
And there's nowhere else to go with Treylon Burks still injured. Like Burks didn't DMP again today on Wednesday. Maybe he gets there by the end of the week, but if Burks is still missing, I mean, literally Josh Weil, who no one had ever heard of, was a top 12 tight end last week because there's nowhere else to go in that offense.
NWI. Yeah, there's not much going on there as far as Tennessee. It's pretty rough for sure. John, who do you like as far as receivers this week?
Yeah, the only other one really I have written down when we were debating paying up for who we already talked about was Jamar Chase. And like, as Rich said, targeted on 32% of his routes. With T. Higgins off the field dating back to last year. Yeah, that's about it. I think we genuinely talked about some cheap guys that we're thinking about playing in this slate. Like maybe you still want to, because I know people got the Josh Downs last week. Maybe you still go back to that if everyone's going to play Wan'Dale Robinson instead. It was the first time that Downs, like his target share dipped below 16%. He was up there at least a little bit. And do we expect Richardson to complete 44% of his passes again? I don't know. Maybe, but it's a much better spot. So that's kind of all I have on my list, honestly. It's more about this week. It seems like getting the expensive players at receiver right since running back really doesn't have anyone at the top except for Bijan.
You guys are probably getting asked about this in your season-long stuff, and he is super cheap. Jameson Williams, I assume they're going to work him back in slowly. My understanding is when you're suspended, you got to be away from the team. So he's been away from Detroit for a while. I assume. I mean, obviously, after a wide receiver 1 in Detroit, it's pretty easy to jump up the WR2 pretty quickly. But John, Rich, either one of you guys have a take as far as Williamson. I assume it's just eventually, but not this week.
Consistent negative feedback loop for Jameson Williams. He's been in the NFL. Dan Campbell's also vocally talked about his work ethic before, so I imagine he's going to make him earn it. And then the other thing is, like, they're 9-point favorites. Detroit they're 7% below pass rate expectation this year. They have a drop back rate of just 50.6%. That's 31st in the NFL. Only the 49ers are lower. I don't think they're going to throw the ball a lot in this game, period.
And it's not like Josh Reynolds has done anything to get taken off the field either. He's been good outside of his one groin injury game where he laid an egg. He's averaged 17 PPR points around that game.
Would Boyd become interesting if Higgins doesn't go, or it's just that? Yeah. Just trying to think of cheap ways.
They always kind of price Boyd where if something were to happen, like he's almost priced like a handcuff running back usually.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, Marquise Hollywood Brown is
Hollywood Brown's too cheap, man.
He's going to be in cash games, at least on a Wednesday night. We'll see, depending on stuff can change. But as of right now, that's the way it's setting up. Okay, let's knock out some tight ends. We'll talk a little bit of movies, and we'll bring TJ in as well for that conversation. Although I don't think he saw the movie. So
I'm playing whatever tight end you tell me is an optimal.
Yeah, tell us the cash tight end, and then we'll pick the one around it.
Well, it's funny because it's probably not what you expect, and I think I kind of hinted at it earlier in the show. Surprisingly, Kelsey is in 42% of the optimals I've run on DK. Now I'll tell you who's second. It's Zach Ertz at 37%.
There we go. Zach Ertz is in. Zach Ertz is in. I'm just doing it. I'm not even going to fight it. I'm just going to play whoever you tell me.
I'll tell you on Fanduel as well. It's definitely not going to be Kelsey. Tyler Higbee 23%, Kelsey 22. Okay, and Ertz 15.
Done. Done.
Yeah.
Higbee and Ertz. What could go wrong?
A Kung would be kind of interesting if Burks doesn't go, but
don't do it to yourself, Dean. I just told you Josh Weil was a top 12 tight end, not a Conquo who is just getting dropped everywhere. Like, don't do it to yourself. They can make that guy 2,500 and it doesn't matter.
Do we acknowledge the existence of Darnell Washington or Connor Hayward or Rodney Williams II? Who are these guys? I assume some are blockers, but theoretically, does one of these guys catch the ball here at the tight end position for Pittsburgh?
I mean,
you get anything?
We're talking about like the Jets Broncos game. Why not just drag Tyler Conklin along? Just pay down for him. You're not going to get a ceiling from anyone at this position anyway. So like Conklin and Wilson's 3 full starts has seen at least 5 targets in all of them. Just drag him along.
He did play a season low percent of routes. Jeremy Ruckert got involved for the first time. Who knows if that's going to be a thing or not.
Who's Jeremy Ruckert?
Jeremy Ruckert actually he was a good prospect. He was actually
a good athlete.
Yeah. He looked good. He's the one that caught that contested ball down the sideline.
Okay.
You probably were like, who the hell is that guy? That was him.
Yeah.
All right. Play Jeremy Ruckert.
No, I mean, I'm fine with Conklin. It's just
just play whatever.
I'm not. I purposely didn't even put a tight end on the list because I'm just going to play who Dean tells me to play.
I do not have a lot of confidence, but I mean, certainly if you have the salary,
I'm not going to fight the machine. The machine said to play Dalton Schultz. I'm not fighting it anymore.
All right.
The machine keeps telling us to play Robert Woods though too, and I keep fighting back. I'm not playing Robert Woods. I see the peripherals. Yes, they pop, but it's also Robert Woods.
On other positions, I can make my own choices. If they're just telling me to throw caution to the wind at tight end, I don't care.
That's fair.
By the way, CJ Stroud's good, right? It's early, it's a small sample, but he's good. Like Houston found their guy, right? I think
he was good. He was good as a great prospect.
Yeah, good for them. How far they've come, getting rid of Watson and now, congratulations to them. It's super, super early, but he seems like, legit quarterback. And
the first time they've won back-to-back games by 20 or more points since 2015.
The The Falcons have gone under their team total by a combined 45 points this year. The
Cool.
Texans have gone over their team total by over 35 points this year. It's like two teams going the
Interesting.
opposite direction. And yet that line, the Falcons are still favored. I just keep eyeing it. It's like, why is my net worth not on the Texans at this spot?
And I
Vegas,
think it even
Vegas
grew.
knows something.
I think it was 1.5, and I believe it's 2.5 now. I was talking about this with somebody else the other day or yesterday, I want to say, like in Houston. And I think it's just Houston's name that comes with a certain stench and just a certain stigma because they've been bad for so long.
My
But, like,
worry
people
is
just
their
don't want
run
to accept.
defense is legit terrible still, and against Atlanta, like this could be like a Ritter throws 17 pass game.
And 0 to Pitts.
Well,
yeah.
that's not happening. Listen, they're begging you on both sides to play Kyle Pitts. There's just no way I can do it.
What was the official? So yeah, Johnny's 2.9.
He's also clearly not healthy, by the way.
He's got a knee, right?
Yeah.
Is that what
I mean,
it
he
is?
had the knee surgery last year. He doesn't look right.
And since we're talking about that, to end with something that's not a tight end, I forgot to mention Nico Collins should be in our player pools too. He's kind of priced odd, given that we're all trying to squeeze in at least 2 of the top 4 or 5 guys with Tyreek, Jefferson, Kupp, Puka. But Nico's still, like, the Falcons have run the second highest rate of man coverage. Nico's second in the league right now in yards per route run in man coverage. Only Marvin Mims, who doesn't get used at all, is ahead of him.
All right. I think that's the show. Is that it? We're going to talk movies. Is there anything else here, Rich, to knock out? We gave the people an hour and 20 minutes. Now we'll have a little fun and talk a little bit of movies. One more time, I'll drop this in chat. And we'll also have this as a pinned tweet. If producer TJ can pin this tweet on the YouTube. Also, if you guys are on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on those notifications. The Listener League, if you finish first in Listener League or first amongst those that are participating that are not a part of the show, we'll hook you up with a month free of RotoGrinders Premium. If you've been watching the screen, you get all the bells, all the whistles that producer TJ has been showing off. So jump in there before it fills. So we'll talk about it in a second. I happened to win last week, and I shamefully, only because like we were all bad as a collective. I take no victory lap as being the least worst out of all of us. It wasn't good. And I'll be signing a movie later on in the chat and throw out some nominees. I have some nominees in my head. I'm bouncing around, but our movie from last week, it was American Animals. If you're curious, if you're interested, it's playing on Amazon Prime. I will throw it to Rich. Did you watch it recently within the last day or two? Is it still fresh in your head?
Boys, I apologize for the run-in here.
What?
Yes.
What is happening here?
I have to run in during this movie because
Yes.
you guys have disappointed me this year. and I need you guys to be better in these movie reviews. I need a score system. I don't care what the score system is. I need you guys to start rating the movies. You have to let us
We'll
know
do
if
that.
we're supposed to watch it, if we're not supposed to watch it. Are we getting spoiler reviews? Are we getting non-spoiler reviews? This is
Good
the
point.
stuff that I
All
need to
valid
know.
points.
This is
I
what
just
I
wanna
need
say-
to know.
As a side note, Rob, you recommended the worst movie I've seen
That is-
this year on record on Twitter.
I recommended it to one person on this show because I thought there was one person on this show that would like it.
They would appreciate it.
Yes.
And
I did
haven't
not
watched it.
I did not recommend it to you, Dean. I did not recommend it to Daigle because I'm still trying to figure out his movie taste a little bit. But I think Rich is gonna appreciate it. It's a movie that you either love or hate. Now, last thing I'm gonna bring up. Next week, TJ, just leave. Thank you.
What a celebrity filled show.
TJ's been muted, by the way. He's trying to.
Yeah,
talk.
he's
I
trying.
think
See, he tries to one up me, and he mutes himself. It's just unbelievable. One last
Amazing.
thing. I know somebody's supposed to pick a movie for next week, right?
Incredible.
Is it Daigle? Do you
It
do
is
you,
me.
do you know?
No, Dean, didn't I finish ahead of you, Dean? Or did you?
Where did you finish?
I thought I was 29th, which wasn't good.
Oh, if you finished 29th, that's you. I mean, I was like 50th, and I was better.
Oh,
I
no.
didn't see.
I finished ahead of you. Brock Purdy, Ayuk, McCaffrey got me there.
Okay, good. All right. Do you have a movie,
Purdy's
ready?
rushing touchdown at the end got me there.
All right,
Okay.
gentlemen. It is October. Next Friday, we have a Friday the 13th.
Ooh.
If we're not doing a Friday the 13th movie next week, what the hell are we doing here? What
Is
are
that
we
that-
doing?
Jason goes to space. Jason's face.
What about October Sky?
Friday the 13th, Dean. In
Should
October.
Should we then pick Friday the 13th since it's my movie this week to talk about it before Friday the 13th?
Correct. You want it to air the week
it's-
of the show, like the
it's
week
your
of the
movie.
Friday the
You get to
13th.
pick.
But
I mean,
I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to.
I
I'm
honestly,
trying
I've
to
been
do
on
synergy.
I've been on a Benicio del Toro kick, so I was going to let you, Dean, pick like what Benicio del Toro movie have you not seen, and we were going to watch that. So Friday the 13th sounds better to me. That's okay.
You pick whatever one you want, but that is what you should be doing next week.
Okay, have you seen American Animals, Rob?
I haven't, so I'm going to dip out and let you guys
Oh.
talk about
I
it.
was going to let you talk about it.
Am I going to get a spoiler-filled review? Am I going to get a spoiler-free review? Am I going to get a score on this?
I'll give it a score. I'm
You'll
gonna
get a
grade.
score.
I will grade the movies from now on a
I will.
scale of tight ends.
On a scale of
Yes.
tight ends? They're all going to be ones? Every movie's a one?
No, I'm
he's
gonna
pick
I'm gonna grade it on a player. That you
on a
can-
name,
to
yeah, which
the
is the
degree
best.
so like if it was a great movie, it would be like Travis Kelce.
Okay.
And
All
if
right.
it was anything else, it would be any
good.
other.
It's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all
Well,
I had to
Benicio del
bring
Toro movie,
for the
best movie for
conversation.
him is
Okay,
Usual
yeah.
Suspects, right? Usual Suspects. Best
That is,
Benicio
yeah.
del Toro movie.
And like it's good, but it's also like the movie, everyone knows what's coming, so you can't really rewatch it. It's not the same sense as when the first time you watched it, ever.
Which
Reptiles
movie?
was pretty good, by the way, on Netflix. Just came out with Benicio del Toro.
That's why I brought it up, because I watched Reptiles the other night before I watched American Animals, and I thought, oh, maybe I should go down the Del Toro rabbit hole again. Escape from Dannemora, he's also amazing. If you want to watch a little mini-sode on HBO about the escape from Dannemora prison, he's incredible in that.
I don't think I know what that is. Sicario, he's very good in. What else do we miss? No Sudden Move wasn't very good. That was disappointing. It was meh. I don't know if you saw that. It came out a couple years ago. But you got anything else as far as I guess we're not even going to talk about Benicio del Toro, but you have anything on Del Toro there? Rich?
No, let's talk about American Animals. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you talk about it. I recommended it. It's a movie that people haven't seen. You rarely see anybody talk about, but I thought it was a pretty well. I'll have you give the analysis, John. Did you like it?
Well, let's start with Rich. I started last week.
I mean, you want to start with me?
Yeah.
So this is interesting. I have nuanced takes here on this movie. So I think from a film perspective, I like the film a lot more than the movie. I like a lot of what the director did. I don't know, really familiar with Bart Layton, but I liked how he like interweaved like the elements of the story from the different perspectives, and it changed. And obviously Evan Peters and Barry Keoghan are great in just about everything they're in. But that's not where it ends for me, because this story is just not that interesting at all. And I feel like that's why he couldn't get as creative with some of the stuff as the movie progresses, because we talked about this, Dean, when you recommended what was the foreign film you recommended last year?
The Invisible Guest.
Yes, The Invisible Guest. And I told you, like, one of my biggest pet peeves in life is like when non-criminals do criminal shit because they're terrible at it. And that's like what happens in this movie. It literally is just about a bunch of bored college kids that are basically entitled and they're just literally have no other reason to do this. And they try to plot this caper. And you called it a heist movie. It's literally an idiot movie. It's humans being idiots. And that's what happens in this movie. And it's not like the thing is like I feel no remorse or like I should be interested in any of these people at all. And that's what drags this movie down for me. From a film, I think it's really cool. On a film, I'll give it a Sam Laporta. As a movie, I'll give it a Logan Thomas. But like it's just, I mean, I was reading something about the real story of this, and it's literally just people being idiots. And like the real story of this is just, I don't think, very interesting.
I liked how they started with the filming and leaning into the biopic and the documentary series. Like, okay, this is kind of cool. But then they actually went away from that for a while, and they stopped cutting away to like documentary interviews for the most part and continue with the plot. And I think that's also why the plot took a while to get there. Like it took us a while, honestly, until like the last 30 minutes to break into the book room. And so, yeah, it was just oddly timed.
Because I don't think that the stories that like the movie like doesn't when they actually get to like the actual story, there's nothing to tell except for them being dumbasses.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. The best part of the movie is the presentation of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my favorite part. That's what stuck with me because it's based on a true story, and that's maybe why. Like, a lot of movies say based on a true story. There was once a guy, the rest they made up. Rudy was all made up, right? Joe Montana will tell you that. But like they didn't take as many liberties in this movie. Maybe they made it less dramatic for that reason because they kind of stuck to how it was a true story. But just the way they told that and the way I've never seen it before in other movies. They bring in the real life people essentially narrating what's happening and talking about what's happening. And the characters, they become the characters a few times. I thought it was really clever the way it was done.
And that kind of made me mad afterwards as well, because I almost feel like I'm helping these people get something out of this.
How do you mean?
Like they now get to like make money off of their story being told when they're idiots, like absolute idiots. Like I don't feel like I should feel sorry for anyone involved in this. And I thought when the best part of the movie was the end when they actually interviewed the real librarian. And her quote was literally, they just wanted an easy way out. They were lazy. They wanted a hall pass in life, basically. And that's like how I felt. Like when we got to the actual reveal of why they were doing this, because the movie ultimately has nothing to say because the characters have nothing to say. The people involved in this, like they try to spin it off of like they're doing this to avoid like the doldrums of life, but like these are like entitled people. Like they're in college, like they don't have any experience. Like it's not like they're desperate and like have to like make these moves to like save like their family or anything. They were literally just bored, entitled kids that like didn't want to go to work.
Was 7 years about right? Was that the right number for
So
you?
it felt like at the end, like I was like, man, am I rewarded by watching this movie? Am I helping them like almost like get like profit like in the end off this?
Nobody's seen this, to be fair. Like, I don't know how much money they actually made out of it.
No,
true. They probably got some money out of it, but I don't know. It's not the most popular movie.
I do enjoy that every heist, like every 80s movie you watch back on that has a montage that South Park makes fun of, that, we have to splice workouts together based on 80s music to get to the next scene. Every heist movie has that Elvis Presley song with like a little less conversation, a little more action. It's always in every heist movie. So I like how they use that. I thought that was really funny.
I thought that was an intentional homage to Ocean's 11. I thought that's what was going on there.
Maybe so.
Sure that's what's going on. And they also gave an homage to Reservoir Dogs. Like it was a movie that was aware. Like it was aware of what it was doing. It was, it was very clear. It stole from Quentin Tarantino and the Mr. Pink. All the colors, right?
I have side point, Dean. I have when I lived in LA. I did the Reservoir Dogs Trail of Tears. Like I went to the warehouse, I went to the restaurant, ate lunch there. Because it's like one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah.
If I could give you a recommendation, I don't know if you've caught do you watch any of the actor roundtables that they do?
I've seen some of them, like depending on I've seen some. I don't know if there's a specific spot you're like host you're thinking of, but I've wandered into some on YouTube before.
Because the Evan Peters one is really good, because I do like Evan Peters a lot, and he's really good in this movie. But he's really good because Jeff Bridges is on that one, Pedro Pascal's on that one, Michael Imperioli. But like you can see how when he went and played Dahmer, like how like it basically changed his life. I would recommend watching that roundtable for sure.
Should I watch Dahmer? I've never watched it.
I haven't watched either, but I've watched that roundtable, and you could see how just playing that character like changed, like took him to a dark place.
Yeah, I would imagine so. He encapsulates the character for sure. So, John, do you want to do your score with tight ends as well, or you want to do it a different way?
No, I'm not taking Rich's bit. Even though, like Rich, you could have leaned into the bit just one more step by ranking them based on players' abbreviations of their names, like based on the middle names of players, as you do, would have been the full bit. No, I'll just give it though a 6.5. It was fine. It was good. Sideways was better.
Yeah,
I compare everything to
Sideways is better.
Yeah. Once you directed me to Sideways, now I rank everything based on Sideways.
I'll give it like I was gonna say a B plus. So what's in between a B and a B plus? Is there such a thing? Does that exist?
Give it a B plus, really? Okay. Well, Rich can do tight ends. I can do numbers. You can do letters. This works out perfect. So Rob is happy for the rest of the time, no matter what.
Yeah.
What a treat getting Rob, though. Okay, what an absolute pleasure.
We got TJ and Rob. What a celebrity filled show.
Yeah, all the producers are jumping in today. Did he talk you into giving us a Friday the 13th? Be your own man, by all means. Give us whatever you want to give us, but it's your call.
I'll always beat to my own drum. I don't mind that, but it does make sense. I didn't even realize that's such a Rob thing to know Friday the 13th in like Halloween spooky season. So sure, let's do that. We haven't brought up a horror movie at all on this show, so let's go ahead and do that instead.
We're doing the original.
Well, so what I've heard, based on what I just Googled 2 seconds ago, is that the best, Rob is in the chat, but the best is apparently Friday the 13th, the final chapter. That's what I've read.
Can I just go in cold, though, and without seeing the first 12 and know what's going on?
I cannot imagine their chronological. There's not plot points, Dean. They don't tell stories. There's no way.
I haven't seen any of the Friday the 13th movies. And by the way, it's not surprising that Rob recommends this, because if you don't know, if you're not aware, he has a ghost story podcast, a very popular one. So
very popular one.
Yeah,
we were supposed to be on it and just didn't get the schedule worked out.
Well, he invites us during our only 2 months off, like for the entire year. So it's hard to squeeze that in. I'm out in the world not getting notifications.
So which one are we doing here? We're not doing goes to space. We're not gonna do that one.
No. I mean, listen, Jason Goes to Space is incredible, though. I think it's Jason 10, right? Is it not Jason 10? Is the space one?
Yes, and that's apparently the worst based on that article.
It's the best.
It's Street Fighter, Friday the 13th movies.
I think he puts someone in a sleeping bag and throws them against a tree.
Hell yeah. Maybe we do need to watch that then. Let's go ahead. Let's finish on Friday the 13th. The final chapter is what it's called. That's the movie for next week.
I don't know if I've seen that one. But
there's no way it's the final, right? There's one that came after it, right? That's just misleading.
Dean, you're asking the wrong questions. It does not matter. It's like The Office. They could have ended 4 seasons, but they not only kept it going, but they're rebooting it. It does not matter.
I will be there for the reboot. There was a sequel to The Never-Ending Story. All right. So we're going to watch the final chapter. All right. Hopefully I'll be able to follow the plot points, having not seen the first 12 or so. But we'll come back here next Wednesday night. Anything else before we step aside? Oh, let people know. Let's let them know where they can find you. Of course they know, but at this point, everybody does, just in case they don't. Rich, where can the people find your content?
SharpFootballAnalysis.com, writing all these games up in detail, every player, every game. You can check out the worksheet. You can also find me every Wednesday night with my guys, Daigle and Dean.
Producer Rob, by the way, jumping in the chat saying it's number 4 for those that are going to watch the. So there you go.
It's the Tokyo Drift of Jason movies. That's awesome. The final chapter was recorded 4 movies early. That's great.
I was lied to. John, where can the people find you?
4 for 4 football, and given that we are 4 weeks into the season, and I can't remember the rest of my point, but I know the site is 44% off now for the rest of the season. So huge discount. If you're interested in that, you can just go there. You don't even need a promo code. Just sign up for the rest of the year. It is a long year. I understand it seems like we're a quarter of the way through, but we're not. There's a lot of work still to be done. We will continue to be here every week through January. So tune in.
For John, for Rich, for producer Steve, producer Rob, producer TJ, for RotoGrinders, I was Dean. Go win something this week. Take something down. We appreciate everybody listening. We're out of here. Holler.
Wait, Dean, I need you to vamp for longer because I just realized I don't know where the Pick 6 outro is. So I'm going to keep finding it. Talk about movie for another 10 seconds.
You just end the stream. You just click end. And you
Fine.
TJ.
But I need to make sure you guys get credits. You're such great guys. You know what I mean?
You're not Wally Pippin anybody on this show. Just it's one and done. We appreciate you.
This has been show of the year. Sorry, Steve. This has been